from the makers of Ratchet & Clank. Ratchet & Clank Going Commando and Ratchet & Clank Up Your Arsenal comes the next groundbreaking entry into the series, Ratchet Deadlocked.
Hey, Ratchet.
After getting abducted and forced into the Dread Zone, Ratchet, Clank, and Al must all fight for their lives or die trying. The title Deadlocked, by the way, comes from the collar attached around Ratchet's neck, which at any time could explode. Originally, I thought this game was the first side game in the series, but according to Insomniac's website, Deadlocked is part of the main series. But I will say that this is the first time that we have seen Insomniac strive from the beaten path of the prior 3 games. You should have noticed in the title that it's simply called Ratchet Deadlocked. While Clank is featured in this series, he is no more of a side character, just like Al or Captain Quark, who by the way, is a man. Before diving even further into the game though, I must give credit where credit is due, regardless of the game's reception. It takes a lot of balls to change things up like they did after the success of the first 3 games. Insomniac willingly took this risk, which in the gaming industry nowadays doesn't happen anymore. With that being said, however, loading up this game for the first time in many years was just as jarring as it was back in 2005. The prior 3 titles brought with them different UIs, but not only was it a different UI in Deadlocked, but the introduction of the aiming reticle. This game as well featured adjustable difficulty levels which could be changed with a simple reboot, and a story that could be completed in a co-op. The first 10 minutes of this game is a bit rough as you try and fight the urge to wonder,
I don't know.
but by pushing through that mental resistance, you slowly start to accept that this game is what it is. The gameplay loop is focused on heavy gunplay with Ratchet. Think of the past arenas, but also combined with the bigger open zone segments with objectives weaved in. Going to different planets introduced different terrain and enemies, but the objectives in each are pretty streamlined. You may have to take over nodes or areas in general, sometimes with the use of the hover bike, hover ship, landstalker, or puma. After completing the main mission of each planet, you are also giving a few optional ones to help you earn bolts and the needed points to help further progress in the campaign. Overall, the areas are satisfactory enough to not feel the same, but the biggest issue is simply the missions. They are not diverse enough to make each planet feel distinguished. In comparison to the previous entries, this is where platforming assists with that issue. Taking the focus on weapons, we also see a smaller pool than Up Your Arsenal, which contained 20 weapons total. Deadlocked only features 10, but instead of providing the player with more weapons than they can utilize, they instead focus more so on customization. Each weapon can be customized with alpha and omega mods. The alpha mods can improve the ammo capacity of the weapon, its aiming, or the rate of fire, while the omega mods provide secondary effects to the weapon such as acid, freezing, or shock. While alpha mods are interchangeable throughout the weapons, the omega mods are more restrictive. Luckily, tweaking your weapons can be done at any time to fit the situation and lets the player experiment to find out what works best for them or their overall preferences depending on the playstyle. Also, unlike Up Your Arsenal, your weapon now has to reach level 10 before reaching its final form in the first playthrough. I will say it feels like a bit more work in order to reach level 10 compared to the previous titles, but one must also remember that the entire focus of this game is the combat. Ratchet also receives different skins as you progress through the game, but sadly there are no armor suits to purchase for him to increase his defense. Shifting over to the story, Deadlocked was known for its darker tone in comparison to the other entries. The past titles were lighthearted for the most part, with some serious scenes here and there, but Deadlocked, from the beginning, focuses on fighting for your life. The levels, the atmosphere, even the music, all feel much more sinister. This may lead to some players feeling like the game is boring, but just like with Up Your Arsenal, Insomniac did a great job balancing the more serious parts of the story with some added humor.
Remind me why I put up with these morons.
Who else would watch Pox News?
Temptation Asteroid, Galaxy's Funniest Decapitations.
Yeah.
Queer Eye for the Tyrannoid.
I get it.
What may make this experience even more polarizing for some players is the bomb of new characters interjected into the series, as the cornerstone ones are missing in this one. That means no Captain Quark or the plumber. There's also no Helga or everyone's favorite monkey, Scrunch. But this is done for a very good reason, as it serves as a pivoting point of the series. Oftentimes, games get attached to certain characters, which may help retain their current fan base, but also deters future fans as they may not want to replay all the old games just to get up to date with all the characters. Speaking of the new characters, we are introduced to Gleeman Vox and Ace Hardlight. Vox is the villain of the game who simply uses the Dread Zone as a source of entertainment and income. Ace Hardlight is your standard tool who Vox uses as a moneymaker. This is very similar in the vein of Chairman Drek and Captain Quark, but we all know Quark is at least charming. Overall, I would say that I found Deadlocked to be a refreshing and brave mix-up to the traditional Ratchet & Clank formula. Insomniac took a risk by removing the platforming and puzzle aspect of the series to focus on combat. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate the different vehicles and missions, but as stated before, it got a bit repetitive as the game could have really used some more exploration. The gameplay loop combined with the storytelling, however, is still as top-notch as it was in Up Your Arsenal. And come on, don't tell me you didn't think shooting while grinding on the rails wasn't cool, cause you're lying. I can understand how some may dislike Deadlocked because it strays from the normal progression of the series, but I had a blast playing through it again. While I do not personally hold it as high as going Commando or Up Your Arsenal in terms of replayability, I could see myself slamming it again in the future whenever I just feel like blowing some things up. I think if I played it in co-op as well, it would be a totally different experience. But the final question to answer here, is it still worth the play in 2023?